What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel for a new video where we will be discussing the character of Darth Vader and his mentality in the post-Revenge of the Sith era, according to Dave Filoni. Now, Darth Vader is a very complex character. He starts out as Anakin Skywalker, of course, this innocent little boy on Tatooine who is discovered by Qui-Gon Jinn and is then swept up in this huge adventure, this massive battle for which he is actually groomed to be the centerpiece for both sides. The Jedi believe he is the prophesized chosen one who will bring an end to the war, destroy the Sith, and restore ultimate balance to the Force. But then we have the Sith, who have been hiding for a millennia, who are secretly preparing to turn Anakin against the Jedi. And of course, that is what eventually takes place. The young Jedi falls to the dark side of the Force, he ceases to be Anakin Skywalker and becomes Darth Vader. But there are a lot of questions out there about why Anakin turned to the dark side and why he chose to stay there after Padme died and after he saw that Sidious was using him, and there are some very in-depth answers out there for all of that. But what everything really boils down to is the shift in his own personal beliefs, which of course are a result of him giving himself to the dark side. Through the dark side of the Force, Darth Sidious manipulates Vader and convinces him that what he is doing is right, and Vader wholeheartedly believes that. For many, many years, he is fully consumed by the dark side of the Force, by his hatred for everything and everyone, including himself. But still, there is no remorse, no regret, no second thoughts when it comes to taking the lives of innocent men, women, children. He does not care, but one day, that begins to change. And in this interview about Star Wars Rebels, Dave Filoni explains all of this in what I believe is an absolutely perfect fashion. So here's what he says. I've always believed that Vader has no repentant bone in his body until he realizes Luke is his son. Luke is the opportunity that triggers everything that occurs. His awareness of Luke being alive forces him to remember his past in a way that's uncomfortable for him. It forces him to remember Padme. It forces him down a path of, maybe my son will join me and together we can rule the galaxy. Luke really has to get him past that thought, which kind of culminates in that scene on the bridge on Endor when Vader says, "It's too late for me." That realization only happens because of Luke. Up until that point, I think he's a destroyer. He's an incredibly angry, hate-filled destroyer. He hates himself, he hates what happened, he hates all of his former friends because he thinks they betrayed him. He thinks he's still fighting the good fight. He thinks Obi-Wan betrayed him. He thinks Padme betrayed him and that led to her and their child's death. He thinks the Jedi were staging a coup against the Republic. He thinks the Republic was weak, and that's why it became corrupt and fell apart despite Palpatine's attempts to save it. Overall, he internally hates himself for everything that occurred because he thinks that he wasn't strong enough to make things right. He's consumed by these ideas and is pretty much trapped. He has no option aside from embracing his new persona, Darth Vader. What we encounter in Rebels now is just a wall of anger and hate, everything that the dark side manifests. It's interesting to look at how he might relate to Ahsoka now. She is a living memory of who he was. Even worse, she knew the good person he was. He doesn't want to be reminded of this, and in a lot of ways, he probably thinks that whole relationship was a failure because she walked away. Filoni is then asked if he thinks that Vader is angry at Ahsoka in some twisted way, and he replies in saying, "Yes, I think in the way you indirectly get angry at people when you don't agree with their decisions or when you let someone walk away and later something bad happens, you think, where were you? You would blame anyone but yourself." Okay, so there is a whole lot to take in there. First of all, for those of you who have been watching my videos for a while now, this pretty clearly exemplifies what I mean when I say Vader and Kylo Ren are not all that similar after their turns to the dark side. Now, there are some clear parallels here as well. Filoni says that Vader is pretty much trapped and feels that there's no way out, and the same goes for Kylo. Vader blames other people for his turn, so does Kylo. But at the same time, as much as Kylo swears by this "it's time to let old things die" mentality, he doesn't really seem to believe that all the time. It's like he's actually fighting to convince himself of these things at the same time he's trying to bring Rey over to his side. Now, this video is not going to be focused on that difference or those comparisons between Kylo and Vader, but I do just want to take a second to clarify what I mean when I say that. Kylo is still someone who feels remorse and regret and compassion. He is not happy with Snoke's decision when he destroys the Hosnian system. His turn to the dark side initially is a regretful one, which he did not necessarily choose, and in the rare events that he does kill in the movies, he is doing so in the hopes that it deepens his connection with the dark side of the Force and rids him of this conflict he has, and instead it has the opposite effect. Whereas with Vader, there is no conflict, at least not until Luke arrives, and this is where their stories become similar once again. Like I say, their stories begin and end similarly, but their journeys are very, very different. Kylo is actually fighting to make the dark side consume him because he feels it's his only choice, and as I covered in my video about the death of Kylo Ren, he actually begins to succeed in doing that. But Vader, on the other hand, has been so well groomed by Palpatine that by the time he turns, he almost instantly becomes a different man without even realizing it. But then, as Filoni says, Luke triggers everything that occurs after that. And this is what's really fascinating to me. Similar to the role Rey served for Ben Solo, Luke provides a glimmer of hope, not for Darth Vader, but for Anakin Skywalker. For the young Jedi Knight who fought so hard to please everyone he loved at once. In this interview, Filoni explains why we view Vader and Anakin as distinctly different people. Because Vader has successfully separated himself from Anakin, or so he believes. But once he finds out his son is alive, things begin to shift, ever so slightly at first. Initially, it's all about getting Luke to join him so that they can rule the galaxy as father and son. But on that bridge in Return of the Jedi, Vader is forced to open his eyes and acknowledge the presence of Anakin Skywalker. He's forced to look at himself and evaluate what's been going on for all this time, and finally recognize that he was wrong. And that's what's happening when he says, "It's too late for me." He's acknowledging that he made the wrong choice all those years ago, but again, similar to Kylo, he believes wholeheartedly that it's too late for him to go back. And so he continues to push this idea that Luke must join him on the dark side, and he keeps pushing the presence of Anakin Skywalker away. But by the time the Emperor is preparing to kill his son, Anakin Skywalker is now fully awakened, and in that moment, the light wins him over. In one fell swoop, Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One himself, kills Darth Vader and Darth Sidious, destroys the Sith, and restores balance to the Force just as the prophecy said he would. And it's so important to emphasize that transition. There is no gray area between Anakin and Vader. Their intentions are similar, as Filoni says. Both Anakin and Vader are willing to do whatever it takes to do what they feel is right. But that's the whole thing about the dark side of the Force. Vader is so twisted by Palpatine that he somehow believes that what he is doing as Darth Vader is right, when obviously it's not. And a young Anakin Skywalker would have recognized that. Now, the other thing that I found really interesting in this interview was the mention of Ahsoka and the impact she has on Vader's mentality. This statement that Filoni makes about how she's a living memory of who he was and how he doesn't want to be reminded of that, but also that he blames her, along with Obi-Wan and Padme and the Jedi Order itself, because when you start down this dark path and allow it to dominate your very being, you will place blame on anyone but yourself. Ahsoka walked away from Anakin and that hurt him, but now Vader has overcome that. In his mind, he has risen above the weaknesses of Anakin Skywalker, and by destroying these people from his past, he further separates himself from Anakin and continues to become stronger and stronger. So, as is pretty much always the case with the dark side, in this extremely twisted way, it consumes people, and they come to believe that the darkness is making them stronger and better, and they feel that this is something that the light could never offer them, and this further justifies their actions, even though most dark side Force users already believe they are right in what they're doing anyhow. So I thought this was a really interesting explanation by Dave Filoni, and I feel it could really go a long way for the people who don't fully understand the character of Darth Vader and his motivations. But what are your guys' thoughts? How do you feel about this separation between Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader, and when do you think Vader first began to consider that he may be on the wrong side of the fight? Comment your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to drop a like to support the channel, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and of course, may the Force be with you always.